All right, recording in progress. All right, today we are going to start with objective of cybersecurity. Objective of cybersecurity, these are the goals or objective why we put cybersecurity controls or security controls in place. Security controls like encryption, firewall, access control, even when you have a fence, you have beware of dog, all those things, they are just to ensure that you have security in place. And the purpose of all of this is to ensure that your sensitive data are remain confidential, they remain intact, and they are available for end users, legitimate users. So the goals of every cybersecurity, the goals of every cybersecurity tools or cybersecurity program is to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So some people refer to this, or generally people refer to it as the CIA Triad. So when we talk about the CIA Triad, we talk about confidentiality, which specify that information, sensitive information, should not be granted. Access to sensitive information should not be granted to unwanted or unauthorized user. Unauthorized user. Sensitive information should not be granted to unauthorized user, because if sensitive information granted to unauthorized user, there are consequences to that. And a lot of them we are going to discuss later in the class. So one way to prevent your sensitive data from getting in the hands of unauthorized people or individual are to ensure that you have security in place, security controls such as firewall, access control, encryptions. Then we talk about the integrity. Integrity is just to make sure that your sensitive data are not altered, they are not modified accidentally or accidentally or knowingly, that they are not altered, they are not modified. And how can you ensure that your data are not modified, either at rest or in transit? Is to make sure that you put security in place. The example of security that you can put in place, security control you can put in place, is hashing, to hash the data. Then the last one is called availability. Availability is to ensure that your information and information systems are available to those people that have the right, the legit people that have the right to those information. Just imagine that if you have somebody pays for your service, they pay a lot of money for your service, and when they are ready to use that service, it's not available for them. Then the next thing they do is to collect back their money. And you don't want this. And it might not even be services that they are paying for. Just imagine that you employ somebody to work for you, and when the person is about to start the work, he doesn't have the access to do it. So the same thing with organizations. They make sure that their services are available for those people that are granted access, those legit people to use them. And how can you ensure that your services are always available? One is to make sure that you have a backup. Should, in case if anything happens to the original data, then you can go to the backup. You can start using the backup. If anything happens to your data, then you can fall back on the next available resources. That is why we have the multi-deployment environment, a situation whereby you deploy the same resources in multiple availability zones or multiple areas. Or you have a cluster, which is a lot of resources doing exactly the same thing, so that if one of them is faulty, then the other resources continue to work. So those are the main three. Those are the three CIA Triad. If there are risks to this CIA Triad, or if an adversary able to penetrate or able to have access to sensitive data, or an adversary able to alter your sensitive data, or they are able to deny access to those people that has rights, to those legit people that has right to use the resources, then the consequences to this are what they refer to as, the result of this are what we refer to as that triad. That triad simply means disclosure, alteration, and denial. If there is a risk, maybe your confidentiality now says that access should not be given to those people that should not have, to those people that do not have authorization. Then accidentally or knowingly, if those people that should not have, those people that do not have authorization have access to those resources, that is called disclosure. If somebody comes to your hospital now and that person do not want people to know about a particular illness they have, and you just go ahead on social media and you post it there, that's a disclosure. So when there is a risk to confidentiality, the risk is disclosure. When there is a risk to integrity, the risk is alteration, when they alterate something. And when there is risk to availability, the end result is denial of service to legit users. When an attacker go on your company's website, maybe they hack the website and they block it, that you have to pay some money before you have access to it, which is called ransomware. Then at that moment that they block that website or that application is not available, will not be available to those people that need it as at that time. And that is called denial. So those are the consequence or impact of risk on the CIA Triad. It's called the DAD Triad, which is DAD: disclosure, alteration, and denial of service. When there is a risk, or when a risk occurs to this CIA Triad, there are consequences to that. There are risks, there are impacts to those risks. If somebody go ahead, hack your database and exfiltrate your data, that is, they store your data, then there are consequences. The hacker might come like, hey, before you want your resources back, you have to pay. Before we can give you access back to your application, you have to pay a lot of money. That is financial risk. And this is the risk value. The financial risk are the risk value of those damage caused by those assets, or caused by having access or alteration to your resources, which are not meant to be available to those people. If somebody go now and modify, you're supposed to pay $100. You are expecting $100 from somebody, and that person send the $100 to you, and before you got to your side, the $100 turned to $1. Then that's a risk there. So those are financial risk. And if you take this to organization, if an organization make a plan that they are going to release a product in 2 months' time, and if they have finalized work on that product, it's just for them to release out to start implementing the plan. Then if somebody stole that plan, then that is a risk to them. But this kind of risk might be different. It might be when an incident occurs, the risk might be of different type. Then it might be a major risk and might be major and secondary risk. The major risk might be the direct impact. Maybe it has to be financial. Maybe if somebody come into your house and they steal your money, that's a direct financial risk. Then so that's you don't have access to the money. But when somebody steal your strategy, maybe you already have your design, you've paid people to do a design for you, and you are ready to start producing, and somebody stole that plan, or they stole that master sheet, then one, you have to go back and start redoing it. And redoing it is not something that you just do like that. You have to pay people to do it again. You have to spend your time on it. That is indirectly financial risk. And there is another kind of risk called reputational risk. And this happens a lot to organizations. If you hear tomorrow that maybe one of your bank that you use got hacked, then the next thing that will come to your mind is to go and withdraw your money from that bank, and you may not use that bank again. That is reputational risk. And reputational risk is kind of difficult for for companies to quantify, because one, even if you don't have money there, if you don't have money in the bank that got hacked, you will not go there. You will be skeptical to go there and open bank account with them, because one, you see that, oh, they just got hacked. They might be hacked again. So why it is difficult to quantify, because the shareholders, somebody like you, the customer or the stakeholder, you will not call the bank like, hey, because you guys got harmed. You guys got scammed or hacked, I'm not going to bank with you again. So it's going to be difficult for them to quantify the losses that they encounter when they have security incident or security breach. So reputational risk is also a very important risk that organizations take in place. We have strategic risk. Strategic risk is when you have a plan. So maybe we plan on a product and say, okay, this product, we are going to launch it in 2 weeks' time. And somebody stole the plan, then they sell it to our competitors. That's a strategic risk, because one, the products that you plan to launch in 2 weeks' time, you will not be able to launch that product. So your strategic has been affected. The strategic has been impacted. And when that kind of thing happens, there is also secondary risk to that, which can be financial risk, because they stole the product, they sell it to your client, to your competitor. One, you will have delay to the market. Two, you might lose your shares of the market, because if your competitor now go ahead and produce that same thing that he wants to produce before you even go to the market, then it will shift the market share to our side. And second, thirdly, you will also lose money, because you can't make the products available as that design that you promise or you have in mind. So your market share is lost, you lost some customers, and you have to pay money to do the same thing again. So those are the three ones. The third one is called the operational risk. The operational risk is when the risk impacts your day-to-day activities. When your website or your web application that your company use a lot, if it got hacked, then there will be a standstill. You won't be able to do your work, because the app that you use to do your work has been hacked. So the business operation has to come to an end for that period of time where you people gather information about the hack, and before you recover from it, the business has to come to a standstill. So at that point that the business comes to a standstill, that is an operational risk, because you can't perform your business. So even if there is a particular product that you need to take to the market, the product has to wait, or you need to deliver, the product has to wait. Those are the operational risks. And the final risk, which is also very, very important, and this is one of the reasons why most companies, they are so scared to get hacked, is because of compliance risk. The government does not want to know whether the people that hacked you ask you to pay millions of dollars, which one they always go against for company to pay money to hackers. And secondly, if you pay the money to hackers, they come for you. Why do you pay money to hackers? And also, if you don't pay the money to hackers, they will still coming back for you. Why did you let them hack you? So whichever way, you are still going to fall in the compliance risk. And organizations, whichever industry that they have, they always have regulatory in that industry that monitors their activities. So if you get breach or you have a security breach, then there is possibility that you find yourself afoul of the compliance or the rules. You find yourself against the rules, so they will surely come for you, and you have to pay for that. There are a lot of rules. There are a lot of standards out there, compliance that every organization has to address to. If your organization is in FF care, like you work in hospital, then the F care, the hospital have to comply with the HIPAA. If your company takes credit card or you deal with credit card like eatery houses, like even hospital that collects credit card, they have to comply with PCI DSS too, and a lot of them like that. So the question now is, how do you protect this CIA Triad? To protect the CIA Triad, there are a lot of security controls that you can put in place. There are a lot of security controls that you can put in place, and all of these controls are categorized. There are some controls. I mean, this control can be categorized in different names. You can categorize those controls that you can put in place. There are a lot of controls that you can put in place, which are going to be looking one by one later. There are some controls that they are just meant to prevent. There are some to detect. There are some to remediate. But there are other ways that we classify these controls. You will see some people, they will classify it based on the objective of the controls. If you have a firewall, if you have fence in place, if you have maybe code review, or you have like a decision policy that say all documents must be reviewed quarterly, all those are controlled to ensure that there is no security incident or to avert security incidents. So all these controls are categorized in different ways. If you categorize this control based on their end goal, based on their objective, then we have something like technical control. We have something like technical control, operational controls, or managerial controls. That is based on the objective or areas of security that they address. If a security control address the is meant to address, maybe it's meant to address the physical security issue. You might term it physical control, and also you might also classify it based on where they operate. Based on where they operate, like if they are operating at digital space, like, oh, the control has to be you have to do control on your server. The control shall have to be on your server. The control have to be like you have to install, or you have to install a configurations, or you have to install an antivirus. All those are technical controls. So if the control is just, maybe you just need to review the work of the technical people, then you might classify that as operational control. And if that control is to ensure that both operational and technical have security in place to protect against security, we have enough. Let's say if the control is just to ensure that the organization has security at a tight security in place to avert security incidents, then that might be managerial controls. So you can classify or categorize security controls based on how they are achieved or based on the area they focus on. If you are classifying it based on how they are achieved, then we have the technical control that is achieved based on the digital space. you have to ensure, you have to configure encryption, you have to configure firewall, you have to configure IDP, IPS, and things like that. But if it's just based on how they, if it's just to review a security document, or you have to ensure that you write a document that specify how a patch management should be done, or you have to write a document on how change management should be done. Those are operationals. Then there are the managerial, that is at the high level, and those are normally carried out by the CISO and the directors, to just make sure that, okay, these are the objectives that we want at the end of the year. They are not going into the detail, into the technicality of the security controls. They are often at the high level. They may just say, okay, we want encryption, we want full disk encryption on all our resources. That is all. So how you carry out this full disk encryption on all the resources is not their own task. Their own task is just to, okay, this is what we want, full disk encryption. Then it is now the work of the operational that will now document, like, okay, if you want to have full disk encryption, these are the, or if you want to make use of any storage, these are the security that you must put in place. Then they document it down, operational. Then now, when you go to the technical people, those are the ones that actually do the configuration of the full disk encryption. So whatever area that the security control falls, either is technical, either it is operational or managerial, all their aim is to prevent against security incidents. And the security functions, whichever one they use, their functions also falls within different categories or types. The function or whatever they do might be to prevent security incidents, which is a preventive control, or might be to detect, detective control, might be to deter, which is deterrent control, might be to correct, which is a corrective control, physical control, or compensational control. So different areas of security, but all of them, they are doing one thing or the other. A security control that is meant to prevent, a preventive security control, is to stop the incident, or is to stop the adversary before they penetrate into our network, or before they cause havoc, or before they infiltrate our data. They are to prevent. Those kind of security are to prevent. An example of them is if you have firewall at the perimeter of your organization's network, is to prevent people from coming into your network. Is to prevent people from coming into your network. If you have encryption, is to prevent unauthorized users from having access to your data. If you have access control in place, maybe you set a security policy on your bucket to prevent public access. Those are preventive controls. So every control that we're going to be looking at in this class, we fall under one of these controls. But the majority, the best control that you can have is to prevent. That's why we always say prevention is better than cure. Prevent people before they come in. What happens if the adversary was able to come into your network? Then the next stage is to detect. The next stage is to detect. That means at that point, your prevention security has failed. So once your prevention security failed, the next stage is to detect it, that okay, there is something not normal. There is an abnormality in our account. Example is maybe before on Friday, before you left work, you have only 4 EC2 instances running in a particular environment, and you know it because you spun those 4 up on Friday. And by the time you come to work on Monday, the 4 that you spun up has changed to 8. And you are the only one that have access to that. So if you don't have detective control in place, how will you detect this? Or even that is even glaring to detect, because guess what? It's 4 instances to 8 instances. That is very clear that, oh no, it's 4. I spun up. Now I have 8. What about those things that you cannot see? Maybe you have an S3 bucket where you have your data, and all the data you have there, they are intact, nothing happened. But somebody has actually come in and infiltrates some of the data. How do you know? And that is why we have something like CloudWatch, CloudTrade, that monitors the activities of user, the API activities of user. So that way you know that somebody has actually logged into the account. So those are detective, you start to detect. And there is another one, which is tools that normally comes with this current, they normally comes with the next gen firewall. Mostly firewall is for prevention, but the kind of firewall that companies do these days, it comes with detection as well. That's why they call them they serve as firewall, they serve as intrusion detection, and they also serve as intrusion prevention. So you can use those kind of firewalls, something like Palo Alto, Checkpoint, FortiGate, Cisco, and the likes. So if you are unable to prevent the security risk, you are unable to detect it, or you are unable to prevent it, but you are now able to detect it, the next stage is the corrective control. You have to, whatever incident that has happened, then you need to take the correction. You have to do the corrective control. An example of the corrective control is if your website is attacked by DDoS attack or distributed denial of service. After the incident, you need to recover. So you have to put some corrective control in place. You have to put some corrective control in place. And you also have another kind of control called the physical control. Physical control is mainly for the real world, because you hardly have a physical control in digital space. You can't have physical control on the cloud. The physical control on the cloud is on the AWS side. That is why we will still discuss about the shared responsibility modules of the security in the cloud. There are some parts of the security that you are responsible for, and there are some parts of the security that AWS is responsible for, or the cloud providers. So that is what they mean by shared responsibilities. So the physical control for the cloud is normally with the with the cloud providers. But if you are running data centers, then you also need to put some physical controls in place. You have to put some physical controls in place, like fence, like alarms, like locks, like maybe all these dimmed light. Maybe when somebody passes, the lights just on. So those are physical controls. Then deterrent control. This kind of control actually is it doesn't really, to me, it's not really a control, because it's, even if you like beware of dog, some people, they don't listen, they will still do it, but it's just to deter them from doing it, maybe just to scare them away. So when you see in a house that they have beware of dog, you might not see anything there. I remember when I was growing up, we always see beware of dog everywhere. I think that there is dog, and the person does not even like dog, and just put beware of dog in his house. So just scam us. Then we have the final one, which is called the compensational or compensating controls. And this is a control that, okay, when everything has failed, then what happened? You need to have something, or you have a control that, or you notice that, okay, if I'm to put control in place, it's going to cost a lot. It's going to cost a lot. The value of that resources, the value of the resources will cost, the value of the control, or the cost of the control, will be much more than the value of the resources that he wants to prevent. It's just like I want to prevent my phone, and somebody is telling me to come and pay $2,000 to prevent the phone. Let's say it's a brand new phone, I've not had any information in it, no number in it, and somebody is asking me $2,000 to prevent a small phone. Then I was like, okay, instead of me giving you that money, I would rather put that money as a compensational control. If anything happened, then I'll go and buy another phone. So the kind of compensational control that you put in place, you must, for that compensational control to meet with to be sufficient for that to be used as a compensational control, then it must meet the intent of the original requirements, the aim of the original requirement, and it must also meet a similar level of defense. So, like example I explained the other time, let's say I borrowed a book from Allen, and if I'm to secure that book so that the book does not lose, maybe Allen bought the book $40 from Amazon, then I can't be using 1,000 to secure the book. Excuse me. I would rather keep $40 in my safe, that should, in case if this book lost, then that is what I'm just going to give Allen his money or buy him a new book. Then I don't have to put any security in place, because the value of that resources is not that important. So those are the main and the objective functions of cybersecurity, cloud security. Any question from here? I can see some people sleeping.
Question, sir.
Hold on, let me call those people sleeping first. Kenneth, where have you been?
Downstairs, sir. What's up?
All right, what's your question?
Yeah, so with all these controls that you just talked about, I just want to understand, where does the SIM come into place, like the security incident and event management tools?
So security incident and event management. Do you hear that? That's monitoring.
Okay, so it's not part of the control.
So no, so those are dictative. When they say want to dictate something, it might fall under dictative. When you say you want to dictate something, how can you dictate? Is to have a platform in place whereby when somebody pass, like a camera, when somebody pass, it's capture that person passed. But where SIM comes in, when one person pass and there's a camera to capture the person, or there is a log that shows that that person passed. So you know when you go back, you can go to your system and check. But when 1 million people passed, or 1 million people try to access your account, then it might be very difficult for you to be able to start looking at the log one by one. If you have seen log before, it's one of the ugly things to analyze. It's one of the ugly things to analyze. That is why it's very, I do always pity those people that do bug hunting. Bug is, I mean, logs is very cumbersome. So we need something, a software that can go into this log. We will just tell the software, these are what we need. We need the IP of the person that access our system. We need the time that person access our system. We need the time, I mean, we need the resources that he or she interacts with. We also need to know what is the bytes of the resources or the data that he moves out. So that is why we need something like SIM, because their work is to take all the logs, analyze the log, and give us what we say we need, and they display it in a very easy format that is very easy for us to look at. So it's also, if you want to categorize that SIM under security controls category, is going to fall here. Technical controls. And if you want to look at their functions, it's under it might fall under detective. It's not to prevent, and it's not to deter, and it's not for correction. Does that answer your question, Ken?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other question? All right, no question. Now, let's start looking at these controls. All these controls that we say, these are just categories of controls, functions of control. Now, let's now pick this control one by one, and let's see what they actually solved. If you want to prevent against security incidents, there are a lot of areas that you must focus on. And yesterday when we are talking, we talked about defense in depth, security at every layers of security at every layers, and we also talked about the last one, that you have a reduction of blast radius. You reduce your blast radius. If you want to secure your data, you must have security at every layers of your applications or your network or your organizations. At the network layers, you have security. But the first security that everybody should put in place is access security, which we always refer to as identity and access management. You want to have a very strong identity and access management. And this can help us not only to prevent against confidentiality, it also prevents against integrity or availability of resources. So because of this, we are going to start our security controls from identity and access management. Then we will move to the data security. We move to the data security. Then we talk about infrastructure, network, and system security.
Hello? Hello? How are you?
I'm fine.
I'm all right. You are
Are you talking,
okay.
are you
Where
talking to us?
Oh,
Paro. I thought you were asking me, am I? We talked about infrastructure, network, and system security. Then we look at logging, monitoring, observation. And your SIM will come under here, Tenet. Application, we're not really going deeply into application security, but we're going to touch the main parts of application security, things like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, code injection, command injection. We look at all those. And then finally, we end with incident response. If you can cover all these areas, every majority of all the controls, they falls within this. And when you say you want security at every layers, when you prevent people's access to have access to your resources, then if they accidentally have access to your resources, which is your sensitive data, you also want to make sure that you encrypt the data so that immediately they have access to it, they just don't take it out like that. They were unable to see the actual data. If they are unable to see the actual data, then it's going to be difficult for them because they don't know whether it's going to be valuable for them or not. And even if they don't care and they want to just steal the data like that, and when they get home, they are going to be looking at it, then you make the network security to stop them so that they won't be able to take the data out from your network. And why your network security there, even if your network security failed, you also want to be able to know by monitoring what is happening in your environment. By monitoring, to be able to trace their path, how when they come to your resources, what they do, you want to be able to trace it, you want to be able to know it so that you can prevent it before it occurs. Then other applications, we have data security, we also have application security, because on your application, there are data that are running on your applications. If you protect the applications, tendency is that you protect the data. And when all of these things failed, what happened? You want to be able to recover quickly. So that's where our incident response come in. So we are going to be looking at, we're going to start incident response today. So incident response, identity and access management. I'm going to start identity and access management, which is also the same thing as, sorry, not incident response, identity and access management, which is also the same thing as account access security. That's where we start from. Identity and access control or management. Identity and access control or management. When you have an account, let's say we have AWS account. Let me log into my AWS. I was trying to prepare PowerPoint before, but I don't have the time. So I just stop it. Like, I'm going to use I always like to use this. I always prefer this compared to the other, so that I can modify anytime I want. All right, so I'm logging into the AWS account. Okay, I just have my AWS account down. So when you have an account or your organization, the first thing your organization wants to do is to prevent access to every resources from unauthorized users. And the question is, how can you prevent access from unauthorized user without you preventing that same access or denying illegitimate users? The first thing you want to do is to ensure that you are able to identify the authorized or legit users. You are able to identify legit users. And how can you identify legit users? Is by giving them a unique identity so that two users were not bearing the same information. You have seen situation whereby two different people that they don't know each other from Adam, that they bear the same name. And you've seen two different people that they look alike. So when you want to identify people on your application, or when organization wants to identify people, or they want to identify applications, because it's not necessarily people that are having access to your resources, an application might have access to your resources as well. So, and it might be a group, or it might be a particular roles. So if you want to identify access to your resources, the first thing you need to do is to grant the user, the legit user, a unique username. Let's say I'm giving Alan access to my Alan's. Don't worry, I'm just going to give you a name. Alan Sam is our name for you. Alan Sam.
Okay.
So if Alan Sam wants to access my account, then there is another person called Alan Faro. So the question now is, I have to be able to identify these two people so that, one, they can take accountability for whatever they do on my resources. So with this, I will create a unique name for a unique username for Alan Sam. So I may call this, and this is why you see company normally do something like Sam.Allen. Then the second person, I also have to create a unique name for that second person too, which is Faro.Allen. So this username, they are just identity. Then I have to go to my access management application. Company has a different access management application. Some people use Active Directory, some people use Okta, some people use AWS. So we're going to be using AWS in this class, possibly with Okta. So generally, basically, if you don't want to go extremely mild, or if you don't want to make things complex, you can just go to IAM. AWS has a access management tools or services that helps you to manage access to your resources, as you can see here. So when I go to the AIM, which is access management, you create a user. This user is what uniquely identify a person. So when I put this person here, it's just to uniquely identify that, okay, this person here is Alan. It is this particular Alan. And this is it. If you are creating access for, if you are creating an identity for somebody, always make sure that you use enough information that you can use to identify that person. Use enough information that you can use to identify that person. And some company found that they are always fault of this or foul of this by not using enough information. And that is why it's always difficult when company they have a lot of access key to rotate, and you are unable to identify who is the owner of this access key. So these people are easy to identify. What about application? Let's say we have Splunk application on our account, but the person that created it does not name it Splunk, we just name it application A. So the problem now is, if you, let's say you uniquely identify this Splunk, let's call it Splunk because that is actually the application. So let's say you uniquely identify this Splunk on AWS. So we want to give Splunk access to our AWS account. So the person does not call it Splunk, he just say S application. So now, if you create this identity on our account so that we can identify that, okay, who is accessing the account now is Splunk, or who is accessing the account now is Pharaoh, or who is accessing the account now is Allen. So if you are able to identify this, or if we want to be able to identify it, we should use more information. And those information, you can provide those information under tags. And that's why they normally say you need to provide a lot of tags. I'm going to show you how to configure tags so that when somebody is creating anything in your AWS account, if they don't use normal tag, like those tags that you want them to use, if they don't use it, they won't be able to create that resources. So that is one way to prevent people from creating identity that is very, very difficult to identify. So if I want to create identity for this person, I just need to go to the account, put the name there, then go to next, just save it. Save this. It's going to request for password, but let's put this on hold for here. When you have an identity is just to identify somebody that, okay, it is Allen that is trying to access the account. And when I see anything in my account, I look, okay, this is Allen, this is Pharaoh, this is my application A or application Splunk. But identify somebody does not necessarily give them permission, does not really give them access into the account. I'm just identifying them like, okay, this person is this person is our employer. I mean, this person is our employee. But guess what? You are our employee, but we don't give you access to our AWS account. Maybe you only work with on-prem services. But if you want to give you access to our AWS account, then you have to authenticate them. That is where the access actually starts. You have to authenticate them. So when you are authenticating person, you are giving them access to the account. So access is normally given using password. So when somebody creates username and password in your account, it's the password that is actually authenticating them and not actually the username. The username is just the identity to identify, okay, this person, when you register, you put out all your information, and all those information, they are tagged or they are attached to a specific identity, so that whenever you put in their identity, it brings out all your information, but that does not give you access. So when you want to have access to an account, mostly access are granted through password or PIN. Through password or PIN. So when you say, so if you want to grant these people password now, then we have to, when we want to grant them password, we have to go back to the account, and that is when we now specify, go back one step. Allen, add. We are not giving Allen anything. Just go to next. Just go to next. Wait, did I specify? Let me delete it. I think something was wrong. I'm recreating it. Great. So the username is Alan. So I want to give Alan user access to the console so that I can be able to access my account. So if I go to next, say I don't want to manage it with that. So now it's requesting for a password. So it is at this point I'm giving Alan access into my account. So anytime Alan wants to log in, he has to use that specific identity so that I know that, okay, this person that is logging in is Alan. So for him to show that he has access to come in, he has to put his password. He has to put his password. So I'm going to just use a custom password called admin123. I'm just calling it Alan123. So I specify a password for Alan. So it is this password that Alan, okay, let's even use the smallest password in the world, 0000. So it is this smallest password, that's for yeah. So it is this smallest password that that gives Alan access into the account. So now, if I create this, it gives Alan access. It gives Alan access into this account. So the only thing that actually gives Alan access into this account is the password. Now, so the access which we use in this case, which is a password, is a general okay, don't worry about that. I will explain all those one later. So the access, the password gives Alan access into the account. So now to give Alan, if Alan logging into the account, he will just be there. He won't be able to do anything. It's just like you invite somebody into your house, and when the person comes into your house, they have no right to anything. They just stand still there. It's until you say, okay, you can sit down. That's when the person is supposed to sit down. If I invite you into my house and just go and just sit down, that means you are passing your boundary because I didn't ask you to sit down. So when you invite or when you give somebody access into your account and you don't give them any authorization, that means they can't do anything. So authorization is what when you give them access to something, and before they can have access to something, they have to prove who they are, and that is with the help of the identity, with the authentication. That is when they have access to their, they have permissions to do something in their account. The general means of granting people access to a particular resources, either accounts, whatever it is, the general means of granting people access is password. And that's why if you open any account, the first thing they ask you is password. So the general means of granting people access to any account is password. But guess what? Password by default is insecure. I don't want to know how strong your password is. It can be cracked. Just imagine, mostly sometimes the highest number of passwords, some application even up to today, the highest number of password that they asked you to have, when they say put your password minimum of 4 digits. If you put that 4 digits as your password, that 4 digits can be hacked within 1 second by using tools. It can be hacked between 1 second. Somebody can guess it right within 1 second. So there are means of gaining or determine what your password is, because password by default is insecure. So how do you secure your password? How do you ensure password or account security or securing? How do you secure your authentication means? There are a lot of means to secure password. But before we talk about how to secure password or how to secure access into your account, let's first take a look at how people can have access to your password to know that password by default is insecure. The first kind of password attack that you can have means that people can guess your password right is what is called dictionary attack, dictionary password attack. If you authenticate users using ordinary password, these are the risks that you are possible to face. The first one is it's possible for you to face what is called a dictionary password attack. Dictionary password attack is when somebody open a dictionary and be using dictionary words. It might not be a dictionary, it might be, maybe they have already generated a list of dictionary words in a file, and they are cross-checking it against you, possibly against your username, trying to guess, possibly you might be using any word, any one of the dictionary wordings. This is what is called dictionary attack. This is a situation whereby if you have a username, and maybe like those of you that normally use your family name as password, let's say your family name is Allen, and you use Allen. So guess what happened? The attacker will take a dictionary meaning and you'll be cross-checking it. You might think that, oh, dictionary is a very big word, that it might take that person some time to come up with. No, it's very, very easy. By the time they write code, they can guess this thing within seconds. By the time they write code, they will just look through all the possible dictionary meaning, and before you know it, they're going to arrive at Allen. And once they write a code that generates Allen for them, automatically they have access to your resources. I don't want to be writing some code here, but this kind of code to detect this one is kind of very, very easy. It's just like you loop several times. Something like there are some libraries that you can use. So I have some ASCII library, ASCII code. I don't want to write code, I'm just showing you. If you go to ASCII library, or you just create an array like letters. I think I have I deleted something like that? Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to write code really. If you write an array and just put letters A to Z in this, if you put A to Z in this array, then you loop through the array. When you loop through it and you say whatever the result it brings, once the result is equal to whatever is here, then that is your password. It's not complicated. It's not complicated, but it's not easy to explain. But believe me, it's not hard to come up with password that are using dictionary meaning. So when a user open a dictionary and try to guess your password by looking at the dictionary, they open your username, they take the first word on the they take the first word on the dictionary, they insert it as your password, enter. If it's not it, they try the second one, they try the third one, and they continue like that. So one day, if they take them time, they will still get at the right password because you use a dictionary meaning. So the second kind of password attack, the second part of password attack is called brute force attack, brute force password attack. Brute force password attack, this is when they normally use technologies like software to randomly guess your password. So here, the applications will be trying multiple combinations of passwords until it arrived at the correct one. And once they arrive at the correct one, it's going to unlock your account. So brute force password attack is also a very crucial password attack. Apart from dictionary attack, then we have brute force password attack. Then
You did your exam? I thought you was doing it downstairs.
we have another password attack that is called spraying password attack. This kind of attack is normally when an attacker or an adversary take well-known password that they know that people normally use a lot, and they are trying to use it on your account. Example of well-known password, we see 000, 111, 123456. Those are very common passwords. You will see QW, QWERTY. You will see something like password, change one. All these things, they are very, very common passwords. So when somebody is taking any one of these and try to use it to guess your password, and they are trying to use it to get your password, they pick the first one, they insert it, press enter. No, it's not this right one. They try the second one, they insert it, it's not the right one, they move. And until they were able to accidentally get the correct one, say, oh, correct, enter. This is what is called password spraying. Password spraying is a technique that they use well-known password. Although this might be slow, but they will surely get there one day when they are trying different known password to gain access into your account. We have credential stuffing.
So,
yeah.
So with that password guessing, isn't that the reason why some websites are designed to time you out or lock out your account after like 3 attempts or 4 attempts? Isn't that also another way to prevent that?
Yeah, that is correct. But this is somebody trying different password. We are wiser than each other, right? When I try the first password, it doesn't correct. I try the second one, it doesn't correct. And some password, some websites, they normally do something that is wrong. They will warn you that you have one more attempt. When somebody tell me I have one more attempt, should I still continue? Will I still continue to try? No. I'm going to stop it for there. Then maybe give it some time. Come back again, try it. That is why it is said, ensure try it slow and low and slow in order to avoid lockout. You will be trying it low and slow. You will not rush it like trying 10 at a time because you're going to be locked out. I hope that's clear.
Yeah.
So although we're still coming back there to talk about lockouts and all those password security that you can put in place. Then the next one, okay, let's go on break. When we come back, we continue from here. Any question before we go on break?
Can we go on break?
Is that a question? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yes, you can go on break.
I'm going. Thank you.
Hey, I did have one question for you, Yemi. It's not regarding what you just went over. It's just a quick question. A friend of mine was asking if that CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner cert is a good cert to get.
The security
First-
practitioner or
Yeah,
security
it's like
plus?
no, not the Security Plus. Basically, they were asking like, is the CASP Plus better than the Security Plus?
Wait, why do you want to do CISSP?
No, I said this is a friend of mine that asked.
Okay. You know, before you do CISSP, you need 5 years of experience. And although it's not, if you want to do, there are variants of CISSP. But I will advise whoever wants to do that to first go and do Security Plus. Whichever security exam that he wants to do, Security Plus is the first one you should take a look at because it's going to open your eye to a lot of things. And especially Security Plus 601, it covers virtually everything that most of these big certification covers. And that's why if you want to work in federal government, that's the first thing that you must get. Any government organization, they always require you to have Security Plus.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I'll let them know.
All right. CompTIA.
Don't go and okay, you can only, I think there is 7 coming out. The current one is 601. I think there is 701 coming out, but I think the current one is 601, and that 601 is very, very good. I have that material, but I have the ebook. All right, you spent 3 minutes from my break.
We have to start all over again. Though.
Yeah, it was not required to stay for the question. So those that stayed knew that the break has started.